Hello and welcome to the May Summit, part of the Esports Leadership Series 2021. Thank you all for joining. My name is Soe Gschwind and I have been a host, an analyst, a caster, a player, a commentator, you name it, within the esports industry for the past 13 years, covering a wide variety of different games and events across the globe. Now, I have the utmost pleasure of being your host for this webinar curated by the Esports Awards team. And we have speakers from many different corners of the esports industry who will be joining us tonight. And they will be introduced shortly, but before we begin, I would love to invite Hannah Robinson, Director of Operations at Esports Awards, to kick off the proceedings.
Thank you, Zoe, and thank you to those of you tuning in from home. It's wonderful to have you with us this evening. I am very excited to be bringing you the 5th instalment of the Esports Leadership Series presented by the Esports Awards. The theme of today's discussion is Women in Esports, and we have an amazing panel of speakers made up of some of the most inspiring and successful women in the industry, so I can't wait to hear their insights later. I also want to say a special thank you to Zoe for hosting us this evening. For those of you who don't know, Zoe also sits on our Esports Awards panel, so Zoe, it's brilliant to have you as always. Thank you. Tonight we will be touching on topics that will help provide an insight into pathways into esports for women, the best ways for brands to engage with a female audience, and talking about the strive for 50-50, what the industry can do to stay on the right path for equality. It should make for some really insightful discussion, so please do, if you have any questions at any point, drop them in the chat and our speakers will get to them. A quick reminder, we will also be hosting a networking session straight after the summit ends, so please do hop over there. The link is in the bio. It makes for a really great opportunity to network with like-minded individuals in the industry, and we hope to see as many of you there as possible. Without further ado, I will pass back to Zoe, who will kick off tonight's proceedings. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, it's been an absolute blast for me to host this as well. Now, tonight is going to be split up into two 30-minute panel discussions with a short 2-minute intermission in between. And at any point, if you lovely viewers have any questions, please feel free to write them into the comment section and we will try to get to it. And of course, if you could try to keep the questions related to the topic at hand, we would very much appreciate that. Now, we anticipate the webinar will be around 1.5 hours long, and then after, please join us around 9:20 p.m. BST, 4:20 p.m. ET, or 1:20 p.m. PT for some breakout rooms for networking with the speakers, which will be on the panel, and other industry professionals will be joining as well. And this session is basically open to everyone, and I can tell you that those sessions, they prove extremely valuable in making connections within the esports space. It's a great opportunity, so definitely I want to encourage all of you to join if you can. Now, the link will be in the YouTube bio section and will be posted in the comments as well at the very end, so you can't miss it. And now it is time to get our speakers on our first panel. So let me introduce to you Kirsty Endfield. She's the founder and director of Swipe Right PR. Kirsty, thank you so much for joining us. And why don't you quickly introduce yourself to our audience?
Hello, thank you. Yeah, really great to be here tonight. So thank you for having me, Esports Awards. My name's Kirsty. I am the founder of Swipe Right PR. We are a global communications agency dedicated to esports and video games, and we look after a number of the biggest brands in the industry, including Face It, Red Bull, Team Vitality, Excel, and a lot more.
Kirsty, I'm so glad you can make it. Thank you so much for joining. Our second speaker is named Karina Ziminaite. She's the head of content at G2. Karina, thank you so much for joining. And you too, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Esports Awards, for having me here. Super happy to be in such a talented group of individuals here tonight. And yeah, I'm head of content at G2 Esports. I'm running our big and beautiful content team, and we are responsible for all the banter and the memes and crazy video content that you get to see. Carlos doing crazy stuff and all the jazz. So yeah, hope to tell you more about this a bit later.
Well, can't wait to hear all about it. Now, our next speaker is Dominika, Szot, VP of Operations from Stream Cards. Thank you so much for joining.
Hi, hello. Thank you, Esports Awards, for the invitation. And my name is Dominika Szot. I'm a VP of Operations at Stream Cards, where we develop a first ever interactive prediction-based card game for esports tournaments live stream. I know it's a lot to digest, but we're having beta tests now, so you can test it yourself. And I also have my tiny podcast on women in gaming. So I speak a lot about what we're going to discuss here at my podcast, It's Her Game. So lovely to be here with such a wonderful woman. Thanks.
Yeah, we got an absolute stacked panel tonight. And the last, but certainly not the least, joining us here for the first round is HB Duran, Esports Insider. Thank you so much. Thank you for making it tonight.
Thank you so much to the Esports Awards for including me and to all my talented co-hosts here. Usually I'm the one interviewing, so it's such an honor to be on the receiving end of being able to share my thoughts. I'm an editor at Esports Insider, one of the top esports publications in the world, and you can find my bylines across the internet. I am a gaming journalist. I have been since about 2008, 2009. And my very first experience in video games was running girlgamer.com. So we've been advocating for women in gaming before it was cool.
That's right. Well, things have changed tremendously, and I'm pretty sure we will be talking about that within this panel as well. So let's dive straight into our discussion, and let me pose that first question to you, lovely ladies. How can the industry continue to better pathways into esports for women? It's a big question, and Karina, maybe you want to go first here.
Sure. Well, first of all, obviously, panels like this, I think are super important to make sure to show ourselves a little bit and to say, hey, there's plenty of us in esports. But also, I think that it's just making sure to say that esports is not just for professionals playing games. It's also for professionals of all different traits. Because look at us, like we have a bunch of journalists here, myself, journalist back in the days. We have in every esports company at this point, we have accountants, we have HR people, we have producers, people behind the scenes. So I think it's also very important to say that there are so many ways of being in esports and contributing to esports growth. And it's open for women and really everyone, because it has so much variety, it has so much to offer. So if you're not good at League of Legends or some other game, there's still a chance.
Exactly. You don't need to be a pro player yourself to make it into this very industry. HB, since you've been there from the very get-go of esports kind of developing itself and growing, how has it changed from then to now in terms of getting women involved in the industry?
Well, I have noticed from the beginning that there were women behind the scenes. There are certainly a lot more now. When I first started going to E3 or GDC back in the day, I was a minority. You'd see a girl across the room and go, "Oh, I wonder who that is." Now you go and it's just about 50-50 now. Now they're not always in front of the camera in terms of esports, like actually holding the controller or the mouse, but they're running the broadcasts, they're coaching the teams, they're running content like Karina. And so I'm finding that it's a lot less rare. And I'll tell you, publishers are paying a lot more attention to the female audience compared to when I first started, which is, just a huge bonus.
Dominika, I'd love to get your insight here as well, since you did mention that in your podcast, It's Her Game, this is a topic near and dear to you. This is something you are discussing a lot. What's the general consensus of your audience? Like, how do they react if you bring out or bring up the topic of esports and women and more inclusion of women in esports?
That's really interesting, because once I started the podcast, it was from my personal urge to get to know more women in the industry. I'm based in Poland. So in Poland, there is not that much access to the knowledge and to the resources. And people quite often don't look outside the Polish media ecosystem. So my goal was to create something that would actually expand their possibilities and expand their reach to the knowledge. So what I found, what was really surprising for me, is that women with whom I talk a lot, from my country, they actually noticed for the first time, probably, that they can work in gaming on the positions different than just, creating games, right? And that there is esports, and esports is not just about being in the team. It's also about creating events, doing marketing, organizing the operations, etc. So what I think is super crucial is to build the role models and to show them to the world, and to show that the role model is not only someone who is on the top spot in the best esports team or is leading the gaming studio, but it can also be someone who is behind the scene, and that those roles are equally important and equally exciting and equally available. So that's what I've noticed, and what is by far the biggest surprise for me, that it wasn't that obvious.
Yeah, no, I mean, Karina said it as well, right? There are so many different opportunities for women to get involved in the esports industry. It doesn't have to be on camera. It doesn't have to be as a player. Now, Kirsty, Endfield, as someone who's a founder and a director of a company, what can companies do to have a pathway available for women to get involved?
I think, so if you'd asked me this question even a year ago, I probably would have given you a bit of a bullshit answer. Apologies for swearing, probably shouldn't swear, but I think just because of my experience and the way I sort of set up the company, which was in 2015, no HR, small business, and everyone and it's kind of a free-for-all in our industry. It's a lot of startups that don't necessarily have sort of the right processes in place to understand or empathize with sort of different women trying to break into the industry. I've always viewed myself as being one of the guys going out for drinks and like quite a casual approach. And I had to take a very hard look at myself in the mirror last year, figuring out that this isn't appropriate. My behavior isn't right. And I think that's something, my learnings are also something that, I can see sort of being quite helpful from when it comes to other sort of startups or other small businesses trying to find their footing and figuring out how to make their team a little bit more inclusive, more diverse, and just more and just to encourage more women to enter the space. And for me, a lot of it came down to actually having HR in place is very, very important, but understanding those sort of different rules that you need to have in place is good. But also just a little bit of training, a little bit of management training actually goes a really, really long way. Being able to sort of empathize with different people who, they weren't as lucky. They had some very tough experiences trying to break into the industry. And there was a lot of sort of red tape, a lot of closed doors. There's probably one role for a woman in comparison to 10 for men. And that level of competition is incredibly fierce. And it creates quite a difficult, sometimes negative environment. And I think being realistic about that, understanding that is quite important. And from all of that, I've managed, for me, it's been really encouraging to see. Like now we're a team of 16. I've got 11 women on the team. We offer a significant amount of flexibility, fantastic maternity policies. And I think, all of that might seem quite steep when you're starting out a company and figuring out how to engage with a broader female workforce. But actually, it's a lot of small moves that you can make to make it just way easier for women to break into the industry.
If I can add on that one more thing, because I've just recently read the report from Fanatic about equality and women in gaming, and there's a really interesting quote about the fact that women try to pretend they are more men than women in our industry, and that's something that has been quoted there like so many times in this report by very mature people who have been working in the industry for a while, and those who are just about to enter. And I think that this is also very important to show that it's okay to be women in gaming. It's okay to have children, PMS, or whatever else, and you can have your humors, and you can sometimes feel worse or feel that you need to ask about something. You don't need to be perfect, and you can have better and worse days. And the space that we have for female employees, for female members of the gaming community, should be filled by people who bring the variety, and for those who are not pretending that they are trying to fit in to those who are already there, but are bringing something new to the table.
Yeah, I think you guys are bringing up a really fantastic point here. You don't need to be one of the boys in order to belong. Like, there is a space for women just as much as there is a space for guys and for anything else. Honestly, there is a space for everyone, and it is available. It's just a bit harder to see. And I think something HB you also brought up is, you go to a big con, you go to a big event, and you're trying to spot that one other woman there and trying to connect with her. But at the beginning, it was very much like, oh, whose girlfriend is that? It was never like, oh, that woman is involved, right? It was always like, oh, who do you belong to? Like, that. It was just weird for a lot of people to understand that women are indeed already working in this industry. How do you overcome that, Karina? How can you explain that to the broader audience, that you're not hired because you're a woman or to fill a quota? You are hired based on your merit. You have just as much right to be there as any guy.
Yeah, so I think I was pretty lucky because I already had a journalism experience. I come from Lithuania. I used to be a journalist there for some years. And as a journalist, you very often do have like that female-male sort of a little bit of competition going on. So we girls have to be tough, like, sort of originally. And what Kirsty was saying, maybe not intentionally, but just probably by type, I feel like I'm a little bit like a buddy type, I guess. So I think for me, it was a sort of easier because I had previous experience, and I sort of never gave in to not feeling equal in any point. That, like, I didn't even question or never allowed anyone question it. So and this is something that I think happens everywhere in the world. Like, if you make people treat yourself as equal, they kind of sort of would feel bad. They don't even try not to go that way. So in that sense, I don't want to say I had it easy. There was definitely some situations where I would probably have ended in a better spot had they been a guy, probably, especially back in the days. But I think just sort of being strong, obviously, is an important point. But I also agree with the fact what you guys are saying, that it would be nice not to have to be of that level of energy, strength, and like, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I think it's way more acceptable these days to have flaws and to be able to work a little bit less hard. Less hard, what am I saying? Same hard, but before it used to be that as a woman you have to be 5 times better to compensate. Right now I think you can just be as good, and this is sort of is all right. But I feel like it was not that tough for me because I already had a previous job experience, which was relevant for the job, and I had a lot to offer as a professional. But I can see where the difficulty comes for the people who are just making their first steps or start in the industry, because they don't have that experience or that baggage of knowledge to back them up.
And just to chime in, I think that is that very, very similar. Like, I feel quite lucky that that I managed to sort of carve out that path, and it didn't come. And I suppose like my behavior just sort of connected to a lot of guys that I ended up working with, and it just made that a lot easier. But I think just now having this conversation, and even over the last few months of just sort of figuring out how to behave myself. It's sort of helped me realize that it is quite difficult for a lot of people to figure out how they fit in, where they place, and also the value that they're bringing. And what I actually learned was that there's a high percentage of women that have imposter syndrome. That's a huge thing. A lot of people don't feel that they're meant to be. I for one don't feel qualified enough to even be on this panel with you guys. Very nervous when it comes to speaking ops, very nervous when it comes to pitching, but I've been doing this for over a decade. So it's kind of ridiculous. I should be, far more confident than I am, but it's sort of ingrained in me. Even though I've been lucky with my position, it's ingrained that actually, should I be here? Am I meant to be doing this? Do I have the right skill set as a guy almost? And I didn't really think about that until, until I started sort of working with other women, growing the team, and understanding how sort of my junior members of the team were feeling. And I've realized I had to kind of buck up to sort of say, actually, no, we can do this. We're absolutely fine. Don't listen to don't listen to anything you were told growing up. It's all wrong. Us women are strong.
Yeah, I think this is a massive problem, though, and I think that goes much further than just the esports industry. I think this is just kind of ingrained in a lot of females around the world. Just that feeling that, am I good enough? Like that, those insecurities are much more, I think, permanent in women than they are in men. Now, I want to talk about brand appeal now. I want to pick your brains and understand how to authentically engage with a female audience. In the past, I think the main approach was just, let's make it pink, and we got them, right? Like that was it. But that's obviously not the way to go. Let's maybe start at where we used to be with it, and then move towards where we're going with it, HB.
Yeah, I've seen that evolve quite a bit over the years, and it has been interesting. Like you said, it was basically just the same thing, only pink. And hey, it's for girls. Or there was a big joke a couple years ago of the esports dress of like, hey, ladies, it's like women are like, hey, we just want to be equal, and they're like, hey, here's a skin tight dress because we know you want to be in esports. So we're like, so like the best advice for brands, I would say, is just treat it like anyone else. Like if you're trying to make friends, do you walk up to them and go, oh, I worship the ground you walk on, and you're just amazed? Like, you're gonna be really cringy. So you need to just treat us like you would somebody that you appreciate and that you like, just like anyone else. Hey, I get that, you like doing this too, so we're going to treat you that way. And depending on what the product is, there have been a lot of makeup brands that have gotten into esports lately, and that's great. Like you said, like it's okay to be feminine. It's okay to like those things as a gamer or being in esports. But then there's also things like insurance or cars or, whatever else they might be selling. Don't forget to include the girls, but don't overdo it, because you'll just make us feel weird. At least me personally, it's like,
there's a line to walk.
Yeah, like I don't want to be left out, but I don't want to be like, put on this huge pedestal either. Like it's like, no, don't overcompensate. Just, we just want to be involved, man. Just include us and treat us with value, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, brands need to understand that there is different needs, be that for a woman or for a man, but at the same time, it is still the same audience. We're still, all involved in the same thing, so it should be treated accordingly as well. Now, Karina is someone who's, creating a lot of content. How are you guys at G2 trying to appeal to the female audience? Or are you at all making that attempt, or are you just treating it all the same?
So actually, I would like to say that we do not segment the audience towards like male, female. What we do actually, of course, is, I guess, as all progressive companies, we look into data and we look at who our audience is and what interests do they have. So we're looking into like, what are they curious about? So if they all like have an overlapping interest of music, maybe we're going to create some crossover content with music involved. Or maybe they're curious about cooking, and cooking is something universal that you can't really divide. Only males cook or only girls cook. We have one of our streamers, Radu, who has like his Radu's restaurant on Twitch, and we're going to be launching also YouTube videos with that. So I think for us, it's more about finding those things that universally speak to people. Because also for us at G2 Esports, as long as I've been around, we've been trying to find the globally, universally understandable humor. We also, even in the content team, we're 20 people, and I think we only have 2 times 2 people from the same countries. We have a very, very various team. We have male and female colleagues there. So I think us being very diverse helps us create the content that caters to more diverse audience. Of course, with the most of the pro players all of the pro players on the roster being male, we have to sort of compensate for having like more various content creators also available and have the female presence there. but usually we try to take into consideration so no one feels sort of closed out, as HB said, but also same time, like, for example, I do love cars and I do love like motorsports content, and we have let's say our marketing director, commercial director are ladies, like also into sports, into like adrenaline and that kind of thing. So I think it's also like really depends. So of course, to some extent, we're shaping to what we like, what like people in house sort of feel passionate about, but same time we're trying really to listen to the audience and see where those things that we can sort of interest that we can cater towards. And yeah, I honestly was really having a good giggle when you mentioned that esports dress. It was a good one, yeah.
Now, I'm checking out the chat right now. Samantha Brown wrote that she thinks that we need to be more clear as women about what that line looks like, because there's no way for men to know how much is too much. And I think that goes back to having women included in your company, in the process, in the decision making, so that a woman can chime in, make her voice heard for all the women, and just be like, hey guys, like maybe that's too far, or like maybe we can go another direction. This is super important, of course, for a lot of company to have that diversity, as you just said, Karina. Just not just different genders, of course, but also people from different parts of the world, because there's different humors, there are different varieties of things that are appropriate or inappropriate. Dominika, someone who is doing a podcast, how much are you focused on what gender your audience even has, or does that not matter at all when it comes to the content you create?
It's actually interesting because like the branding of my podcast is pink. So this is like the most, how to say that, the most feminine color, or however we're gonna call that, that can exist. And I actually picked that color on purpose because I think that there is nothing wrong in the color, and as long as I feel comfortable with that, I don't see the problem with pink branding. And I actually contrast that with the very strong guests. So people who are on my podcast, they actually show that even though it's pink and it can be considered girly, etc., it actually has a really strong message, and super smart and wonderful woman who can inspire others. And regarding the audience, I thought that because of the pink branding, I would actually be more attractive to female audience. And in the beginning, it was like that. Like my audience was like 70-30 female to male. And now it's actually equal. It's 50-50. So, the color is not it doesn't matter actually, as long as the content is important, as long as the content is interesting. And I actually, to make this podcast, it's just like the path full of surprises, because I got so many messages from male audience who told me that it's super important what I'm doing, and even though it's small and it's it's growing, but it's still quite small, I see a lot of positive feedback from the male audience, because they're saying that they weren't even aware of so many amazing women working in the industry, because they sometimes even have the colleagues who they would like to recommend, but the women don't feel comfortable sharing their stories because they don't feel that they are good enough to actually share them. So I think that it's also important to focus on the story, and not because you speak to women or because you speak to men, but as probably Karina said and HB said, it's about speaking to people who are interested in something. So I really like this friend analogy, because it's, you're coming to someone on the party and you're not saying, oh, you're a girl, so your favorite color is pink and you probably like, wearing dresses same like as me, right? No, it doesn't work like that. So you actually let the other person speak, so you can get to know the other person. And I think that, creating the content like that, creating the meetings like this one today, organizing them, and doing a bit more research on the company's side than just putting on the board the word gamer girl would be very much appreciated by the female audience, and the industry in general would benefit the industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think those are some great points you're making there, really. Also, I love reading the chat right now. HB, you bringing up a great point as well. As a woman, you said you tend to not want to rock the boat. You don't want to be that contrary voice, even less so if you're one of the very few females on a team. How does one overcome that kind of feeling and actually chime in and make the voice heard?
It's for me, I lucked out like many of you where I worked in environments that were very welcoming. My first foray into gaming and esports was surrounded by women because it was a female focused website. So that did help. But even back then, I felt like I needed to prove myself to the outside world that, hey, I'm a real gamer. Because at that time it was very popular for models to pose with gaming peripherals and stuff, but maybe they didn't really like play. And so it caused a lot of controversy. And for me, like when you're a professional in the gaming industry and you're a woman, you can get that imposter syndrome. And so I really like the trend that there's a lot of mentorship going on, because it gives you, it's one thing to see more women in the industry, and that does help. But if you can connect and talk with them like we are now, it helps you realize, hey, I'm not the only one. Hey, I do know my worth. Like Kirsty said, I shouldn't be, worried that I'm not qualified. And so it gives you the strength to say, hey, I know my worth. And you don't have to overcompensate for your gender either. You just like the other way around. You can just be professional and know your worth and express yourself. But if you have questions or concerns, you can definitely connect with other women. And I love that is so much more common these days. I'm within a stone's throw of a woman every day now, and it's just fantastic.
And it's great to see them lifting each other up as well, where it used to be fierce competition. Only one woman can have that spot. Only one woman can work on that broadcast. Now it's like, oh no, there is spots for as many as you want, as long as they're really good at their job. Now, Kirsty, I want to cycle back to something you said a little earlier, which was taking a hard look at yourself in the mirror, asking yourself some questions on how you can further the pathway for women to get into this industry. What kind of questions did you actually ask yourself there?
It was, is my behavior good enough? Am I doing the best job that I can? Do I understand what my job is as well? And I think no one teaches you how to become a manager or to run a business or do anything like that. You just kind of, it happens, right? Sometimes it just happens. And with that, you don't necessarily understand the different hats that you've got to wear. I was working in an environment where it was, I started working with a lot of friends as the company grew, and I'm staffing up, I'm hiring new people that I don't know. You're not a friend anymore. You're an employer, and you have a responsibility to people. And I think it was just that learning curve of knowing that actually, and this was part and parcel of imposter syndrome, to be honest. It was sort of going like, well, no, look at me. I'm just some junior person in the industry. That's not that's actually not okay. And I think that's something that, I'm seeing, I work with a lot of startups as well. And a lot of the time it's going to be a handful of guys making these decisions. And I think, that's why sometimes just sort of even small things about adjusting the language that you're using in a job description, or figuring out sort of the flexibility within your work environment. All these little things can just really help. It can just really help sort of build up that, just encourage more women to sort of to join your company. And it was that really, I suppose that was the side of things, which is like, am I doing this the right way? No. So let's get a bit better.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more one can do, right? There's always room for improvement, and that's how we keep things moving. Now, any last thoughts, anything you guys want to share with our audience before we move on to our second panel of the day?
I have a fun fact about the color pink, which is
Go for it.
That actually, and you need to fact check this, but I believe in Victorian times, only men could wear pink because it was too vibrant for a woman. So, how the tables have turned.
Okay, I'm stealing this one, for my podcast.
And the 80s. don't forget, there was a lot of neon pink on guys in the 80s, so it's really a social thing.
Guys are reclaiming the color too. My husband is wearing pink, and he wears it with a conviction that
my
I
boyfriend
don't
does
have.
too.
No, you love to see it. Also, of course, high heels used to be a man's shoe. Just saying, throwing that out there, right? We were not the first ones with that. Yeah, how to turn tables, as they say. Ladies, it's been an absolute blast picking your brains. Thank you all so much. This concludes our first half of this webinar. Thank you so much to the first group of panelists: Kirsty, Endfield, Karina, Ziminaite, Dominika, Maria, Szot, and HB Duran. We will be back with our next panel session in 2 minutes, so don't go too far. Take a look at this teaser video for the main show in Arlington, Texas, which will happen on Saturday, the 20th of November. It's going to be an amazing night, and you don't want to miss it. I know that I'm going to be there, and I hope to see some of you in Arlington for all the festivities as well. And if you want to attend the awards, drop the esports team email or join the networking session right after this panel to meet them in person and have a quick chat. Now, let's take a look at what's in store.
To ask you, are you ready? I mean, if that teaser didn't get you excited, then I don't know what will. I'm very, very excited, even more so to know that all of the action is going to happen again in person. So that's going to give us all a sense of normalcy coming back into the 2021 year. Now, we have our second set of panelists about to join. So without any further ado, let's get them straight in, starting with the lovely Rachel Feinberg. She's the co-founder and CEO of Ateyo. Why don't you introduce yourself very quickly?
Hi, Zoe. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Rachel, as she mentioned, and I make, with my best friend, the comfiest technical apparel to game in, and I'm calling in from Los Angeles, California.
Right on. Yeah, I personally love wearing your stuff, even more so now that we're in a work from home situation. I can wear sweatpants all day long, and they're usually Ateyo. So
sinners, but yes.
Yeah, you're making work really easy. I might be wearing them right now. You don't know. I mean, for all the audience, no, I don't even have legs most of the time. Now, our next speaker is going to be Paige Funk. She's Vice President and Marketing at Nerd Street Gamers. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. As mentioned, my name is Paige. I'm with Nerd Street Gamers, which is an esports infrastructure company. By infrastructure, it's our goal to create tangible opportunities, whether it's exposure to pro teams, whether it's to become the next big talent in esports, or even get a scholarship in esports. That's Nerd Street's goal and mission, and we do that through tournaments, content, and our local host esports facilities.
Absolutely loving it. Thank you so much for joining us today for a chat. And our next speaker is Emmalee Garrido. She is a professional video game player for Team Dignitas. Thank you so much for joining. Why don't you quickly introduce yourself as well?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Yes, so my name is EMUHLEET, and I'm from Riverside, California. I've been competing in esports for over 14 years now, so for quite some time. I made the team that I'm currently on in 2014, and during that time, we have won 5 world championships. And I'm also a vocational nurse, so I work in the mental health field and the addiction field.
Awesome stuff. Now, I can't wait to hear from all of you lovely ladies with our topics moving into the second part of the webinar. And I would like to direct this very first question at you, Emmalee. As a professional player, what do you think is the best route to actually move forward for women competing in esports? Do you feel like it should be independent events or mixed events or maybe a hybrid of both?
I probably would have answered this question a little bit differently some time ago, but I'm definitely noticing a change in terms of the number of women that I'm seeing competing as a player. In my particular game, Counter-Strike and Valorant, we probably have the most women that are competing that I've ever seen during my 14, 15 years of playing. And I think that is strongly because we have women-only tournaments. And these tournaments are just to create a safe space for women that haven't competed yet and just to kind of get that experience and make some teammates. So what a lot of people don't know actually is teams like my team, we played in only 3 tournaments, women tournaments a year. And the rest of the entire year we were playing in mixed events and we were flying to local LAN tournaments, Philadelphia tournaments, Nerd Street tournaments actually. And we were the only women teams there. And this is because we wanted to show people that we're here to get the experience that we need to win tournaments, but also that we've been working our butts off throughout the entire year. So to answer your question, I definitely feel like it's a hybrid of both. I think the end goal is to not have women-only tournaments, but it's just the beginning here. It's just getting more and more women to compete.
Husband bringing me lunch. Thank you.
Oh, that's
service, I know.
Blackened salmon burrito.
Blackened salmon burrito. Yeah. That's good. I'll keep that one for later. Now, right, back on topic. Paige, maybe directing this one at you, as you're working for a company which is providing opportunities for female gamers, you know, to participate, to compete, to find their path. How important is it to actually have those gender splits in these tournaments?
I agree with Em that having the female or women-only tournaments is very welcoming to women who want to compete. Esports in general has a big intimidation factor where going from gaming with your friends to registering for a tournament is a big jump for a lot of people. And especially for women, where an industry that's known for misogyny, it's known for a lot of hate speech. By feeling like you're entering a safe space, I think is going to be huge in terms of getting more diverse talent and player talent into the pipeline. It is one of my favorite questions, though, because I think the industry assumes that we all have the same thoughts on it, whereas women still are individuals. And woman who thinks that they should compete directly with men and be thrown right into the competition, another woman might be very pro all-women tournaments. So I think having a healthy balance of both and just listening to each other talk about it and the pros and the cons of both paths is going to be super important for growth.
And Rachel, actually, I love that you're on a panel right now, because if I'm looking at team jerseys in these kind of situations, very often it was just male cut, very unflattering, not the nicest to wear for any woman out there. How important was it for you and your partner in crime to provide proper gear for women to be comfortable whilst playing video games and also look good whilst doing so?
So for those that don't know, we make technical apparel for gaming. So we focus a lot on the best clothing to game in. So we personally don't believe that, you know, a sublimation printed jersey is the best. We don't think it's breathable. We also definitely don't think it fits most women's bodies. So as we kind of grew as a brand, it was really important to us that when we launched women's wear, we did it in a really kind of thoughtful way. You know, what I want to wear and what, as you mentioned, Paige, not every woman's the same. What a woman of a different body, and build would like to wear is totally different. So in developing our product, specifically our women's wear, we tried it on a variety of women of different sizes and kind of talked to them, do you overheat when you're playing? Do you want sleeves? Do you not want sleeves? And so I would say that our women's collection, which is now live again, this is great timing, is kind of just the first step in really building products that are specifically designed for women to game in. And I also think a really important note that unfortunately gets overlooked is while it's ethically, and I believe it's really important to include women, it's just also a good business practice. So I don't personally understand why other brands wouldn't focus on it, because there are women gamers, they buy our products. I can tell you 50% of the people that buy from us are women. So even if you don't care, there is an opportunity to make money. So I think that it's not just the right thing to do, it's also a smart business decision. And I try to say that, and I think that hopefully it will convince more people to make this a better space for women.
Absolutely. Now, Emmalee, as someone who has been involved in professional gaming for a very long time, was that a sense of pride to be playing in a female-only tournament, or was that something which you didn't really want to shout from the rooftops? Because I know there's a lot of, I guess the main concern people are having with that is like, but the competition isn't as high. Like, that means that you're not good enough to play in a male tournament. Like, is it still that way, or is it now a sense of pride that you can say, like, I'm playing with this all-female team in this all-female tournament, and that's awesome?
I mean, it's nice to be able to say we are the best female team in the world. And the only way to say that is by competing against female teams in the world. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think we all love competing in these events, because that kind of earns us that official title in a sense. But I mean, me and my teammates also love competing in mixed events. Like last year, okay, maybe not last year. Time goes by really weird lately. Whenever it was safe, we last went to a tournament. Actually, it was a Nerd Street tournament, and we were the only women team there. And we made it to the grand finals. And for us to be the only women's team there to make it in the grand finals of a mixed event, like, that's huge in to me, I think, because we kind of have like this cool advantage because these guys don't want to lose versus an all-girls team, So both events, women only or mixed events, are extremely humbling, satisfying for all of our hard work. It's not just one event particularly.
Now, Paige, what are the general reactions to female-only tournaments whenever you guys organize those?
Generally positive. I will say we staff up more than for a mixed tournament or a primarily male tournament, where we have more mods on chat and we're monitoring social media a little bit more. You're always going to have somebody that comes in and talks trash, and it's been interesting. So one of the first big all-women tournaments we did was the Summer Showdown, which was summer of last year. And as an organization, you always try and figure out how to best turn down the trash talkers or shut down the haters and all that good stuff. But what we noticed for that tournament is that we didn't have to defend ourselves. You had individual players, individual gamers coming to the defense of the tournament, whereas we didn't have to form a statement. We didn't have to walk an edge of trying to shut somebody down on social media, because so many people had our backs, which was really, really awesome to see. Another cool part of it, because, I myself am not a competitor. I'm a marketer by design, and I game for fun. So being able to tap into players like Emmalee, like some of our own tournament operators, and get their perspective on how the tournament should be run, how it should be presented as a brand, and listening to each other, I think has proven to be really successful. And, that tournament launching to now, you see with Valorant, we have the Game Changers that's directly coming from Riot, and we're getting publisher buy-in to create these opportunities. It's been really, really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, and just for the record, defending these kind of things is not white knighting. That's practicing common sense. Just throwing that out there. Now, heading into our second question here, we obviously all want to strive for a 50-50 split in this industry. So how do we stay on the right course, and where can we make bigger strides? Maybe directing that at you here, Rachel, as a business owner.
I think that while I think gaming, over the years I've been in gaming, there's a lot more opportunities for women, and we are totally seeing more women pro players and in really kind of behind the camera and in front of the camera roles. I don't see, unfortunately, that many female business owners in the space. And I always say that we could use a lot more, and that if anyone's interested in starting a business, you can reach out to myself or my co-founder. But I think that until we kind of grow women up throughout the industry, there are amazing women here, but we need to let them know that they can start business in this space, they can be in executive positions, they can be pro players, that there's a variety of roles for them, that unfortunately it's not all going to change overnight. I also think it's really important that this responsibility not be assigned to women. Unfortunately, women aren't always the people making executive decisions or don't always know when there are job openings. So I think it's really the responsibility of men, who are often the people in positions of power, to help women kind of know when a job is available or how to negotiate or when just, this is a great idea, you should start a business. I think that it's going to take the entire community, and it definitely can't just fall on the shoulders of women.
I mean, there's definitely something we discussed on the first panel as well, that a lot of women have that imposter syndrome. They wouldn't even apply because they think they're not good enough. Whereas a man rocks up with confidence, like, oh, I don't really have qualifications, but I can make it work. And lo and behold, it does work for some of them. But of course, there's always more one can do. Emmalee, as a female player, how do you encourage other women to give it a go, to give it a shot, and kind of maybe overcome the fear of like the backlash or the hate they could be getting from the community?
Well, I started playing in esports from like literally the very beginning, before there was pathways that we have now. So hopefully me and my teammates were kind of pioneers to kind of pave the way to where women don't have to go through what we went through when we were first competing. Now there's so many different ways to get started. Nerd Street is just doing it wonderfully. I think there's so many great pathways. There's programs you can join, whether you want to be a caster as well. There's different teaching groups, I guess, to kind of help you elevate your career in esports, even if it's not just a player. And I think that's great, because a lot of women, like we were kind of talking about before, don't know how to get started, and they also don't necessarily have that confidence to kind of break out of their comfort zone. So now that we're seeing more women figures, pro players, streamers, business owners, which is awesome, they can follow their lead in a sense. The pathway is kind of being written for them of an easier way to follow their goals too. So everything that we're doing, like panels, women tournaments, is just the beginning for us.
Yeah, Paige, how do you guys encourage more women to, give it a shot and make it a living?
Yeah, so for us, as Emmalee said, and I mean, everything she said, I don't think anybody could say better. But one is lowering the barrier. So when I say that, it's removing the intimidation factor of esports. We also even have youth programming in terms of camps that are open to all genders. And that even starts with educating parents, which historically are the moms that get you involved in the summer camps and everything. So talking to them about what is Discord, how to build healthy gaming habits with your child, how to improve their skills, what are the pathways in esports. A lot of parents still don't understand that. As our generation grows and the next generation grows and has kids, I think that'll start to balance itself out, because gaming, as well as competitive gaming, is becoming more normalized. And two, I think would be just creating that safe space and giving the players an opportunity to speak and have their voices heard. As I mentioned before, coming into a tournament and knowing that any kind of hate speech will not be tolerated to any level is a huge step in just getting people out of their comfort zone. A lot of people have referred to the all-female tournaments as like a showcase without realizing the badass talent that is underrepresented in the space, either because a team doesn't want to enter a tournament with men or there is that intimidation factor. So creating those safe spaces, and as Em said, decision makers in businesses, and especially ones that aren't afraid to have their voices heard. Nerd Street works really hard to create a culture that on all levels, everybody's voices are heard. So whether you started yesterday and you're an entry-level employee, whether you're an executive, whether you're somewhere in the middle, we encourage everybody to speak up. We have an internal diversity panel that monthly brings up issues. How can we incorporate it into our programming? How can we incorporate it into social media? And it even comes down to tough conversations. I mean, I run marketing, and I had to have a conversation when it got flagged, like, why didn't we say a statement about this issue? And it was around misogyny. And from my perspective, I'm like, when you say a statement, when you don't, when you have to donate, all of that good stuff. And being called out in a way that helps you evolve, helps your company evolve, and having those open conversations without any kind of fear, I think is really important for internal business dynamics.
Couldn't agree more there, Paige.
I have something to add.
Absolutely. Go for it, Rachel.
I think there's also really important, I think a lot of times we talk about how we can make the industry better and what do we do looking forward. There also are a lot of women in this industry that have accomplished incredible things in every aspect of gaming. We just launched our women's wear collection, and in making the video, there were too many clips that we wanted to include. There were so many women, whether it was Dig winning a world championship, or it was, an on-air talent, or a streamer getting, a pentakill, whatever it was, there are a ton of women around gaming that are doing exceptional things and have built this industry. And so I think it's really important also that the industry recognize that, and brands use that sort of content to tell those sort of stories in a really meaningful way, because it's not just today we need to worry about how do we get young girls to play games. It's really understanding that there are women here, we need more women here, and how do we elevate those that are here so that we can build the industry for the future.
Absolutely. And HB is bringing up a great point here in chat as well, saying that colleges are doing a lot to train future generations of esports pros in different fields, regardless of gender. So big shout out to them. Absolutely. It's great to see that involvement from schools, from colleges, from parents, as you mentioned, Paige, as well. It is very important for parents to understand that this is a legitimate path, career path now. Emmalee, as you said, when you started, it really wasn't when I started. I played in my first tournament in 2006, and we won a coffee mug sleeve or something like that. That was a big prize. It was super worth it to travel hours and hours to get to that tournament, right? Mm-hmm. But it wasn't that was smiled upon, if at all. Now it's a real career. Being a pro player is a real career. Working behind the scenes, that's a real career. All of these are valid career choices. And it's very important that we, get that exposure on all these career choices one can make, regardless of gender. Now, we have a question from Brett in our chat who is asking, why do you think video games have been traditionally associated with or marketed to boys and men? How would you like to see it shift to girls/women? Any of you guys want to answer that question?
I think there's a really interesting, you can go, Emmalee.
Go ahead, you can go.
I think it's really interesting because if you look at the LCK, so League of Legends, though, overseas, I believe 50% of the audience is women. And I think that really shows that how you tell stories and how, the marketing and the campaigns are executed, it does attract a different audience. And so I think that, historically, games haven't always been targeted at women. I think they've also portrayed women in pretty misogynistic, stereotypical, offensive ways. And so that doesn't make women want to play games or show up at events or work in this industry. But I think that as brands are starting to realize the value of women and that they do exist here, we are seeing the narratives and the way women are portrayed in video games really change. I think there was a headphone commercial I was watching the other day, and I was watching it kind of to see if I could pick up on something offensive, just to understand how stories are being told. And the women content creators and pro players were shown playing games. There wasn't some weird beauty shot or their hair flowing or something like that. And it was actually so exciting because they were just shown, in their bedroom streaming. And that's just how a male content creator would be shown. And so I think it's really important that we not, hypersexualize and tell those stories, but also look at kind of different pockets of gaming where it is working successfully as really good references.
Emmalee,
Don't
do you
know if
wanted
that
to
answered.
add anything?
Beautiful answer. Really, it's pretty much the same thing I was gonna say. I mean, when video games first came out, we were living in such a different time. You have to think about that too. So now with all these movements happening and women getting the recognition that we deserve and need, I think that we're just living in a different time now. We're seeing video games that are having more women characters in them. Me personally, I don't play video game thinking, oh, I want to play a woman, but some of my teammates do. We're all different. And so Valorant, I think, has like the most women agents that I've ever seen in a video game. So that's maybe a reason why we have so many women that are playing. But yeah, we were just living in a different time back then, and now we're changing. Good changes.
Absolutely. I think it's also certainly helping that there are more voices to be heard. We are broadcasting these things, so more women feel like they can identify with other female gamers. When I played games in school, not only was I really not cool for doing so, I also just didn't know that other women would also play games. So when I made my first few characters in, I don't know, World of Warcraft, I hid the fact that I'm a girl because I thought that's just weird, I didn't have other women I could relate to, and I thought like, oh, I'm all alone, so I better pretend to be one of the dudes, right? So yeah, I think it's just really changed, and now that we can relate, that we see that other women are doing the same thing, we can also be gamers and we can be loud and proud about it, which is a beautiful thing, really. So yeah, we're about to wrap this up. So any last questions you have in the chat, feel free to drop them. And any last thoughts maybe from our panelists, anything you want to share, anything you want to say for the future women in gaming?
I think it's going to be onward and upward from here. As Em and both Rachel said, times are changing. I would love to look back hundreds of years ago, or even like when they created Legos and it was all male targeting for that. But within marketing, even though you try and target as specific as possible for an audience, I think it is moving more in the direction of interests and not gender. It's more gender fluid in terms of audiences you're trying to reach. So I'm really hopeful for the future. I mean, we have 4 badass women here now. We had 3 additional ones in the panel before this. So it's really exciting to see and to be a part of.
Yeah, and I think as a player, you have to realize that I think in anything you do, even as a nurse, I kind of felt this way. There's going to be someone that pushes you down, that doesn't make you feel comfortable in your area of that you want to follow. But when you fall down, because you will, I've fallen down a few times. When you get back up, it's what you do that matters to continue reaching your goals of what you've been working so hard for.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's onwards and upwards, and I think that it's not going to be like an easy trajectory. I think there's obviously going to be hurdles, which I think is really important. But I can say that from my time in the space, it has dramatically improved. People say sexist things to us still, but nowhere near what they would say 5 years ago, which is really interesting to see that, in just 5 years, it can change so much. So I think that personally, I would just like to say any women that would like to start a business, you definitely should. You totally can do it. And we'd love to help however we can.
Absolutely. I love that we are living in a time where we are uplifting each other as well. It's not just fierce competition between women. Like, we love to see more women in this space, and we, move everything we can to make that happen. Now, a few last things here from the chat. HB is writing, imagine when it was weird to have a female doctor. Our time will come. Yeah, but that's it, right? Like, things like that used to be weird, and now it's not anymore. Like, no one is raising an eyebrow at a female doctor. Like, that's just not a thing. I think it's becoming more and more normal, not just accepted, but it's normal to have those female voices heard in this industry as well. Now, one last question from Media Gold. What women's brand would you like to see sponsor esports for women? Paige, maybe asking you here.
That is a really tough question. I don't know. I mean, on my side, not necessarily sponsorship, but I'm a huge proponent of publisher buy-in, continued publisher buy-in. And I know that doesn't directly answer the question, but I think it's going to be one of the biggest movements. Huge shout out to Riot, who I think is doing a great job, as well as a few others. But In terms of brands, I might have to throw it at Emma or Rachel because I really can't think
have
of
an
anyone off the
answer.
top of my head.
Yes.
Go for it.
Well, as a player, I mean, I want to see more non-endemic brands investing into the women's scene. And this might sound cliche, but like I love makeup. I want to see more makeup brands, for example, investing into women esports. Imagine going into a store like Sephora or NYX and you see on the wall a poster of a women gamer. That would be amazing. I want to see more brands like that, I think, non-endemic ones investing.
I mean, we're seeing it on the male side, right? That we have that targeted non-endemic brands. You have shaver companies or shaving companies joining in. Like, why is Venus not joining in for our tournament? Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like there's just so many companies they would have such an easy in. They honestly would have. Like, it would actually be the easiest money spent for them, and they're just not doing it. Rachel, why do you think they're not doing it?
I think it's pretty hard being a female business owner in this space. You're always in a room of just men, I would say. I think that there's a lot of fun female-founded brands, like the newer brands that, this is a new industry, that they don't have some like bureaucracy to kind of go through. So Bumble, which is a dating app that really prioritizes women's safety and internet safety, has activated in gaming. I think things like that. I believe it was with Dignitas. I know they did some with
Genji. Yeah.
Genji, sorry, that's the other women's team. But I think that it's really important that kind of the brands make sense as a whole. There's really a way luggage has had maybe a fall from grace in the last year, but it's a female-founded travel brand, which I think is then really interesting. I think travel brands should definitely be in gaming and esports, and there's something, if Dignitas female team works with a women's founded travel brand, there's something really interesting in that story, and how integral and what a big part of their team and brand is that they're always on the road traveling. So I think that it would be really exciting if it wasn't just like the huge brands we already knew, and it was really like women-founded brands that were really investing in the space.
And I personally always love it when, it's going to sound so weird, I'm not phrasing this very nicely, but if it's usable. Like, I don't like to just put something on my stream for the sake of this is a sponsor of the thing and now it's here, right? Yay. That doesn't really sell. Like, it needs to be something that you use as a person, be that makeup, be that nail polish being mentioned, or like any of these things which are actually, where the influencer or the player or the company, they can say with a conviction that they stand behind the product and they're happy and proud to present that product. And I think you can make a case for a lot of different products. I mean, Rachel, yours, Ateyo, like a lot of gamers are wearing it, and they're not wearing it because you asked them to. They're wearing it because it is legitimately comfortable and they are enjoying wearing it. Yeah. And it makes sense for them on a day-to-day basis, not just because they could get paid for it, right? So I think that's just very important that it makes sense. Now, we are out of time, but ladies, it's been such a pleasure to have you on this panel with me today. Thank you so much for letting me pick your brains.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is our pleasure. So that wraps things up for now. Thank you all for joining. But before we head over to the Zoom link for networking, I would like to thank again our keynote speaker, Hannah Robinson. Thank you so much for setting this all up. And I would also like to thank once again all of our amazing speakers today: Rachel Feinberg, Paige Funk, Emmalee, Garrido, HB Duran, Kirsty, Endfield, Karina, Ziminaite, and Dominika, Szot. It's been such a pleasure to pick your brains, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for coming on to our show today and share your insight. Now, we have our next Esports Leadership Summit coming up in June, so be sure to look out for emails and join the Esports Leadership Series on LinkedIn group, which has also been posted in the comments, or should be posted any minute now. Now, thanks again for joining, and make sure to join us in some networking breakout rooms now with the speakers and other industry professionals who will be joining as well. And I can't stress enough that this session is open to everyone and a great opportunity to make connections within the esports space. So we definitely highly encourage you to join in on all the fun. Now, the link is in the YouTube bio section, and it will also be posted in the comments of this stream. So that's it from us now. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to catch you in our networking rooms.